So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for March 29th, 2024. We will follow the agenda as outlined in the issue that was created in the TSC repo, which was issue number 1563. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements they would like to share? Okay, if we don't have any announcements, let's move on to...
I was mute.
Oh, sorry, go
The
ahead.
call for proposal for node.conf.eu is open. So please send us your talk proposals. Thank you.
Does it make a
And
difference when they're submitted? Like, is it more or less likely to be accepted if it's like near the end of the period?
Sorry, what does it mean?
Like, do we need to rush on it, or submitting it at like the last day of the open period is the same as submitting it today?
The tip is better. The earlier you send, the better it is.
Okay.
Okay. Any other announcements people would like to share? I've tried promoting Marco. Thanks for the mention. I'll do it again. I guess then on to our reminders. So again, if anybody has any nominations for the contributor spotlight, please remember to nominate them. We are waiting for a batch, so we will have that in a future meeting to review. CPC and board meeting update. I guess, Matteo, anything from the board?
Yes, good news. We can use SQLite.
Oh, excellent.
Nice. So yes, that's it. That's the good news. Okay. So that's it. There is other good news. So we got the new program with Zero Devs is on the way with I think jQuery is the first project. So things are pretty good. Okay. Then I think that's there's the two major bits that are relevant and so on. There was a slight charter change in the CPC, but nothing that was approved, but nothing major. Biggest stuff for us is the SQLite.
Yeah, that CPC change was just really to document our consensus seeking approach, which matches what we do in the Node project. Okay, so that's all for board and CPC board meeting updates. The next one on the agenda is really as an FYI, since the TSC is the one who would review nominees. We've discussed a few times. I don't know if anybody has any things they want to bring up on it. I know there's been some active discussion, so it's really just waiting for that to tail down before it would land. Okay. The next one is depth-lib source add experimental web storage, and I think that one was really just on the agenda waiting because of the SQLite. So does it still need to be on the agenda, or can we take the tag off and let it move forward in its natural progression? I see, Matteo, you just removed the tag, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Agenda tag removed. Okay, Open Collective and GitHub sponsors for Node.js. I'll just mention that there is a Next 10 deep dive that the Next 10 team is planning funding, which I think would be related to that, and the next one. But there has been some discussion in terms of the sponsors one. I don't know if there's anything people want to bring up today in the meeting in particular to discuss. I think Matteo, you added to the agenda, I assume as an FYI, or was there a specific question we needed to answer?
Sorry, I'm lost. The GitHub sponsor, you mean?
Yeah, this is this issue. I'll paste in the,
Which one? The 153? Yeah. Yeah, well, there doesn't seem agreement. So I added it because there's no agreement. So the question is, there's no agreement. It's good that we chat on it. If we not, we decide we close this. Okay. But there is no agreement. So, and I think it's relevant enough that we should talk about it. Okay. There's a proposal from Yagit, and it has merits, okay, in the sense that other projects can gather quite significant money with GitHub sponsors and Open Collective. Where significant money, I mean, I don't know, if you look at what was getting, I think, ESLint, okay, they get I don't know, 5-6K a month as an example, okay, which also mean that yeah, that's it. Okay, so but that money then is not a lot. It's significant, but not a lot of money in the generic scheme of things. Okay, and it
Harish
would
has
be
his
a
hand up. Sorry,
Hmm?
go ahead. Sorry, I thought you're ending. Go, keep going.
No, I'm done. I was just mentioning this is the situation. Okay.
Okay.
So
Jarish has his hand up.
Yeah, I just agree with Matteo. We should discuss this further. Because my point is, as long as there are backlogs in the project, there are items for which we don't see folks volunteering, then the natural direction to take is to see if we can incentivize those problems, those activities. The most common reason why folks are not able to volunteer is because they have different priorities, they have different employment contracts or other sort of things. And if incentives are going to address that to an extent, we should consider that. On one hand, we say there are a lot of areas that we need volunteers. On other hand, we cannot say that we don't want monetary system that do not gel well.
I see Rich has his hand up next, I think.
Yeah, I have never seen paying contributors work. And so without a very, very clear model of how we're going to make this work without, I mean, we it's the same problem we have with Build, where it's like everybody's a volunteer, but we don't have enough people. Maybe we should pay people, but then what does that mean for the volunteers? And I think we want to be careful about perverse incentives. But I mean, maybe ESLint has cracked this nut and nobody else has. I kind of doubt it, though. I'll just leave it at that.
I'd add my 2 cents that I think the one model we have seen work is where like the security work is funded in basically a full-time person.
Yeah, but that's stuff
has,
that's not in the open. Oh, I mean, but that's that involves a lot of work that can only be done in private repos and private HackerOne, et cetera, that involves, trust and access and all sorts of things. And so, if we're looking at specific areas like that, that might be different. But if we're just looking at make buffer faster, that's going to be a lot harder to sort out.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just adding it as like our model could be we create one of these funding things and we collect enough money and we wait until we could like fund somebody like a security lead or something. I don't know, right? Like there's different ways of doing it. Some might work, some might not, right? I think it
Okay.
would be good. Okay, I see Mateo has his hand up.
Yeah. So my take here is very easy. It's unless there is like one option could be we open up the open collective, okay, and then we don't distribute it. And we keep it essentially more or less in a similar way to the of the security thing and of the security crowdfunding, and we deploy that money whenever there is a need for the project. The need for the project can also be, I don't know, renting a venue for the Collaborator Summit for what it matters to me. Okay. Okay. It's essentially one way could be we just open it up. Okay. But we don't distribute, or there is a significant feature that needs finishing. Okay. And then that's it. Okay.
Yeah, I think like I that seems more practical to me than say the model of like, hey, little bits and pieces, right? Like, hey, you can apply for, you've done some work, you can apply for some payment like that.
Yeah, like
That
$50.
seems like a lot of
like
work to manage. Like on our point,
Yeah.
like how do you approve those? How do you say
Well,
yes or
exactly.
no?
Exactly.
Whereas if we collect money, like the security one, and then it's like, hey, we've got this need. As a group, we agree ahead of time that like we should spend the money to like to fix a vulnerability because we don't have any volunteers to do it. And then we have some money to do that, right? Like that model seems a lot less overhead and therefore more practical to me.
How much has the foundation been involved in this topic? Because like it seems like anything that touches money should really go through them.
No. So, okay. So this is the wording and the position of the foundation in this is actually very specific. Okay. By the bylaws of the foundation, we will not be able to, but as a rule, okay, the Node.js TSC essentially can run a crowdfunding account using the trademark. So let me read the text that the ESLint includes, but this the text is standard for anybody that wants to do a crowdfunding for open source within the OpenJS Foundation. So this collective is run and for the benefit of the independent contributors of the ESLint open source software project. This collective is not endorsed or administered by the OpenJS Foundation Incorporated. The OpenJS Foundation does not receive and has no control over any fund contributed. The OpenJS Foundation does not direct or otherwise supervise, and a lot of all of these things. Okay, all donation made will be expended for the private benefit or otherwise reimburse individuals that do not have an employer-employee, contractor, or other agency relationship with the OpenJS Foundation. The ESLint marks are used under the license from the OpenJS Foundation for the benefit of the open source software community.
Has anybody talked to anyone on the ESLint TSC about what's worked well and what has not worked well with this? I think that would be I'll leave a comment.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing to do. But this is for ESLint, but Webpack is doing even better. Like Webpack has a lot of money in Open Collective, at least. Webpack as Webpack has raised in total $1,500,000.
Let me know when they spent it.
The
We're
one
good for
of
raising the money, but I want to know. I want to know what happens when they go to try to spend it. What problems arise?
The way it works, okay, I'm pasting the link here. So all of this is public. All this information is public. Okay, it's not private. And basically, people some are have their own company and they send invoices to the project. And yeah, that's it. Like an individual, Alexander, is sending a 7K invoice. Is sending a 7K invoice every month to at the end of the month to Webpack. Plus others are getting money from it.
So I don't know if we're going to close on this topic today. Other comments, or thoughts that people want to add? I will say this is like this is the next 10 deep dive that's being organized. This is part of the area that's planned to be covered, like just generally like funding or support for collaborators in general. Like, and the concept would be like, do we want to do it? Do we not want to do it? What models might work? Whatever. So I think I agree with the few people who are like, hey, we should discuss this because it's out there. But I don't have a preconceived opinion yet on like, yes, we want to do it or no, we don't, because there are lots of things that play into that, right? In terms of, well, okay, if you got money, how do you use it? But I do see value for us as a project to figure that out. And even if it's like, no, we don't want to do this, like discussing and documenting that so that people understand why or why not. Any other? Anybody else with any thoughts? I know there's been a few people who've shared their thoughts, but there's a bunch of other people as well. I guess the ask would be to please think about this, because it sounds like we don't necessarily have agreement that we would say yes or no right yet. So we need to continue that discussion. Okay, if there isn't anybody else who wants to chime in, I will move on to the next issue, which I guess is related, but not the same thing. It's allow collaborators to share GitHub sponsors link in the project README. And I'm going to see if anybody put that specifically on the agenda. Please feel free to jump in, lead the conversation. I see it was Benjamin who isn't here today. I think it was like the intent was like, if we did do this, we definitely want to make sure there aren't any concerns or objections.
Seems okay to me.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Seems okay to me as long as there's no implicit endorsement or anything. It's just, here's people who have sponsorships in the collaborators list. Here's a link.
I think we did discuss a little bit last week too, and there were some mentions of like it needs to be well defined and structured the same for everybody, because like there's tooling that would need to be updated to support that.
Oh yeah, node core utils would need to be updated if we did this.
Yeah. So it sounds like
I
there isn't anybody who's, I don't
mean,
think
I don't
I've
think
seen anybody in the issue saying like no to the general idea, but just discussing through like some constraints like that.
yeah, I don't think it's actually going to like generate a lot of traffic and revenue for anyone, but you know, don't know till you do it, I guess.
Yeah, and I'd look at it as like if it's something that supports people, even a subset, like maybe it's worthwhile. So anybody with concerns, discussion, or anything to add on? Otherwise, I think like I'm half wondering if we should take the agenda tag off, as it's been on a couple times and I haven't really heard any like, hey, no. Just more like, we need to do it carefully.
I think one important point Antoine brought up there is that we need to open the discussion to the rest of the collaborators.
So Roy, I
know-
can't quite hear, or I can hear you, but I can't understand you. It's like you're in a deep tunnel.
Or your microphone's covered, maybe. Is that possible?
Yeah, is it better now?
That's better,
Much
yeah.
better, much better. Thank you.
Okay, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I just mentioned that Antoine brought up that the discussion should be open to all collaborators. I don't know if we want to move the issue to the repo and just ping all collaborators there. I don't know how we'll proceed, but there's just basically like, not much
Yeah.
sense in discussing just the TSC, like, but also opening for the input to all collaborators.
Yeah, we could move the issue if we think that helps. And I think also like obviously there'd be a PR. Like I think the first thing that like as opposed to just letting people PR this in, I think we need to document like, yes, this is something we do, and here's how you do it, right? Like you can have a single link here. This is what it's got to look like because the tooling will support it, as well as like if it's a single link to what, right? Like if it's your own page, we might even want some words around what's we think is acceptable or not on that page, because there were a few comments in the discussion of like, well, we wouldn't want links to certain kinds of sites or whatever. So I don't know how specific we want to be, but like I could see we at least want to set the expectation that like we're trusting you as a collaborator to do something that doesn't reflect badly on the project. Or we could be very specific, like you can only have this, this, and this, right? But so I think that's the next step, if is like a PR which would document that, and then we'd know what to update to and the node core utils, and we could work through all those specific issues. Okay, so does everybody agree we should like we could just move this issue though, right? Like if the concern is, hey, it shouldn't be in the TC repo, it should be in the node core repo, I think we'd be happy to move it over. And then the follow on could be in the actual PR to document what's okay or not.
Maybe jumping to the PR might make sense then. Kind of
Okay.
accomplish the same idea.
So yeah, okay. So okay, let's open, discussion. Unless there's somebody else who'd like to do it, I'm happy to volunteer to open that documentation PR. And then I'm sure there'll be a good discussion in there. But also happy if somebody else wants to do that. Okay, I will do that, and then we will take the agenda off this off the agenda as well. And then once that PR opened, we'll actually just close this in favor of discussing there. Okay, the next one is package maintenance installation approach and viewpoint. Jeffrey, I think you've done a lot of work related to this one.
I think it was discussed last week. Is there anything? I don't think there's any new updates since last week.
I think the key thing in my mind, like, so there was a bit of a discussion. I think the key thing I haven't heard anybody say that doesn't make sense. So like if we think there's consensus that that way of doing the installation does make sense, then the next step I think would be to say like, okay, if we agree to that, what does that mean to the discussions on core pack? Because my understanding of it was that the ask was like, okay, let's pause the discussions on the core pack so that the package maintenance team can form an opinion on how things should be installed. This, I think, captures that opinion. So now maybe the time is to go back to those discussions and say like, okay, what does it mean for each, what does it mean to those? Do we open the vote that was started on
Well, I
landing it
thought
or
we
not?
were,
Do we?
well,
Go
we
on.
haven't actually updated the docs yet. I thought we were gonna like actually write the new instructions and land a PR updating the instructions on our downloads page to, like,
So maybe
and
that's
then,
the new question is like, are people happy to now wait on those until like the suggested web page document updates are complete? If so, then that sounds fine to me, right? Like,
I mean, just to elaborate a little bit, but what I was thinking was that like, we need to figure out the other question of like what we already have the NVM recommendations. Are we going to add any other version managers like NVM? Figure that out, get that sorted, maybe make some kind of distinction between version managers and like system package managers like Homebrew and Chocolatey, so that it's not confusing that they're like in the same category. But then it's like, once that's sorted out, it's like say just taking the NVM one, for example, if core pack becomes unbundled, then it just continues to be published to NPM, but it's not part of the node bundle. The same PR that unbundles core pack would just add the instruction like, here's NVM installs node, npm install core pack or whatever, command you want to use to install core pack from the npm registry, core pack enable or whatever, etc. Like those instructions could then be like, this is how you used to do it. If you want the exact same behavior, this is how you will continue to do it going forward. And that's the migration path. And then going onward, even from that, we can consider having two binaries that we create, one with and without npm, so that we have like the existing one for backward compatibility, but then for people installing through these instructions, if they know they don't need npm, they can do that. Just a different command that gets node without npm. But that could be like a, further down the line follow-up.
okay, so I guess the suggestion is like, okay, let's not restart those discussions until after the website's updated. Is everybody, do we think we have consensus on that? In which case we can probably move on because that hasn't completed yet.
Yeah, my assumption is that like if we do anything to core pack, it wouldn't be until node 23 in October. So, we've got plenty of time. Hopefully it shouldn't take us that long to write a web page install instructions. So, it's not like a rush on this.
Okay, well, I don't see any objecting to like, basically let's wait till the website instructions are updated. So, I think on this one then, should we just take it off of the agenda until, there's I added it on the agenda to make sure people were aware, but I'm happy to take it off until that happens. Okay, I went ahead and did that. The next one is coordinating the Node.js security audit report finalization and publication. I don't think I've seen, I don't think
Email,
we've
yeah.
received. So Raphael, go ahead on that one.
We didn't receive the email yet from
Okay.
Steve, so no updates.
So nothing to discuss this week. The next one is revert module have a single hooks thread for all workers.
Yeah, I added it to the agenda because I think it's there was a recent breakage in an experimental feature. Okay, it's experimental, but that was that came as a surprise. Okay, it was not clearly marked as a breaking, and the breaking came in the form of a deadlock of the process. Okay, so it's not even that it was thrown an error, said no, this is not supported anymore or something. It just literally process is waiting for something that's not happening. And I just think like this broke Angular. It also broke Platformatic. This is how I found out. Okay, and I did a few checks, and it has been breaking how a few test runner interact with TypeScript, and also how a few test runner can do mocking and so on and so forth. So in the light of the fact that we have learned that this has broken a bunch of people, I'm asking this to be reverted, not because it's a bad change. I think I'm super supportive of the change, but we should have a better strategy of to handle the breakage. And if the breakage, and maybe the breakage can even be avoided to begin with. Okay. And now part of the problem comes that a part of the behavior was that we regressed on was not tested inside our parallel test. They were only tested on a very special job that verify that all of ESM works similar in both a process and a worker or something like that. And that was and those tests were skipped essentially. So this is essentially why I'm saying, look, we broke people. It's probably better to flip it back, maybe even just on 20, okay, on the 20x line, and then move.
You mean 22, I'm assuming?
Sorry, not 20, 22. Sorry, on the 22.x line, and then reassess it and get it over the line in a way that's not that support our users that are using these things in this way. So I don't know. You have probably more to add, Geoffrey. So it's
Well, yeah, potentially some good news. There's Gabrielle opened a PR 2 hours ago to fix it.
okay,
I think
good.
Paolo's been working with him. I don't know if Paolo, you want to give an update?
Actually, we were working together. I mean, together, but in parallel, because he was aiming for a solution that will keep a single thread while I'm going for another solution, where it can eventually solve the issue that we have nowadays, but also some other stuff in the future. So maybe I might have a working solution also by the end of the day tomorrow, eventually. And we can evaluate which one to pick. The things that there's only one hit on the Gabriel solution, because I've reviewed the code and it looks fine to me. There's only one thing that I would like for him to change, which is not touch the C++, just to install an atomic lock. So we can probably do in JavaScript, but that's technical stuff. Probably we can think about it. But despite that, Michael, you might want to go first, and then I will add something later after this.
I guess my only thing was like my understanding is the breakage wasn't intentional, right? And I kind of agree if we did something unintentionally, unless we can fix it, so like maybe it's a moot point since it sounds like there might be a fix, our default should kind of be if we unintentionally made a breaking change, then reverting that breaking change to get back to where we were and then working on the fix seems like the right way to go to me, just as a general matter. So Paolo, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, I mean, for sure the breaking was unintentional, but Geoffrey, correct me if I'm wrong. It's also unintentional because he was find out that the breaking change was not even meant to be working on the first place. Basically, it was completely either undocumented
That's what, yeah, that's what makes this a little complicated, is that the PR that started this was a bug fix. So reverting it just goes from one broken state to a different broken state. You know, and so that's what I was like, you know, I've been dealing with people complaining for years now about every time the Hooks API changes and it drives them crazy and they yell at us every time we change it and blah, blah, blah. So that was my hope, was that, well, we, you know, unintentionally we pushed a change on people. This one at least only affects, you know, a small subset of users. It doesn't affect every user of the Hooks API. It only affects people who are like kind of treating workers as pseudo child processes that are like treated in a different way than the main node process, that are running different customizations than the main node process. So yeah, CLI tools might very well do that. Like testing tools might do that. So it's not like it's a invalid use case or anything like that. But anyway, yeah, I'm trying to avoid like, yeah, we just made a change. Now we're gonna make another change. Then we're gonna reland the first change. You know, like that's a lot of churn. And if we can just fix it quickly, and you know, yeah, it sucks that we push this on people. But if we can just like go straight from this to the fixed, you know, the desired end state, rather than back to a different bug and that we still then have to fix again. That would be my preference. My only question before I give up is give up the talking is what's the cutoff for the next 22.x release?
Marco, maybe you can help on this.
The next 22 release, I think it's next week, probably in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So like, can you give me a rough date of like something needs to be on main by what, like June 7th or something, or like roughly like in order to be
so we don't have a
a
volunteer yet, but let me check. There should be a date on the repository.
I can do it.
Okay.
And basically we
So
don't need to current release. I mean, we need to have things on main, but it doesn't need to stay there for like 2 weeks.
So for reference, the last one was the 15th. So I guess the next week there's going to be one, I assume, if someone volunteers.
Okay. So my take on this, Geoffrey, that I mean, first of all, I mean, I've seen Gabriel's PR and we'll fix the behavior. I mean, the broken behavior. Now, the biggest issue that I have here, but it's probably out of scope of the current problem, things that we're discussing, is that there are many, I mean, you keep saying that people are using worker threads like child processes, but I mean, it's not completely true. In this case, what I experienced was that I was expecting I mean, in a way, basically the thing is that I would like to basically isolate some part of the code in Node, and therefore I use worker threads in a way, right? To run in a separate thread loop and so forth. And that's why basically we run into this behavior in the loaders. But it's also surprising because I've checked the documentation in the Node docs, basically, since I was not familiar at all with loaders. And what I found, first of all, confusing, that sometimes he says that you should work for import and sometimes for require on or both cases. And it does not specify what happens if you basically start on the main thread and works on the worker threads and so forth, which is also confusing. So we also have to clarify we have to explicitly at least clarify which use cases we support, which one we don't support, and which one we don't support yet. So something that is not supported at the moment, but it might be in the future. Because once we have that clear, we can, for instance, to give you an idea, if calling register from the worker thread was never meant to be supported, we could just say throw an exception and forget about it, right? But we need to know that, because that is probably the worst problem in this case. It's not about the fix, that the broken part that was introduced, because of course that happened and it was fixed, that's fine. But the fact that we don't even know what was supposed to be working or not. That's my take here. So we need an effort on the documentation side also.
Well, there was a PR in progress for that too. Was like to try to clarify, because like so specifically, folks, if you're not been following along, the hang happens for when someone does new worker file name, and then it's exec rv, and then an array with dash import some file that.
No, it's not even required. You can even do with the register without import. It happens the same way, because the reason for the problem is that if you don't run the register with import dash import or not from the main thread, basically on the main thread there will be no worker which can process the request from the worker threads. That's the problem, because in the worker threads what happens is that since it's not on the main thread anymore, it will start the customized loader, but it will say I'm not on the main thread, so I have to forward to the parent port, and there is nobody listening there, so it ends forever. That's the core reason.
So I think unfortunately we did want to have a short private session. We're down to 3 minutes. So I think we should move on to that unless there's something we absolutely need to cover before closing out.
My take here is that if the Gabriel's PR works, or if I'm able to deliver mine tomorrow, we can probably post the revert, because we might fix it in a couple of days for now. Otherwise, I would say in 2-3 days from today, let's revert.
And we could always land his and then
Ah.
also yours if it
By the
adds
way,
even
it
more
just need
behavior or
the
whatever.
revert just need to land on V20. Okay, it doesn't need to land on main. The problem is not.
22.
Otherwise, people will start screaming on online very quickly.
And of course, you meant 22 again.
Yeah, 22. Sorry, it's not landing on 22. Sorry, my bad.
But yeah, and whoever's doing the release, if you could let us know when you start figuring out who's doing it, like what's the cutoff for when things need to be landed, because then we could either land one or the other or the revert by the cutoff.
You can mention it on the Node.js release channel on Slack, so we can make sure that all releasers will read that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so sounds good. There was one more issue on the agenda, but I think we're gonna have to skip that, and we'll skip the strategic